Hello and welcome. We're doing this show in downtown Greensboro, but if you take Market Street out of here and you take 29 north, you will be in gold country. By that I mean it is District 2, which is representative of Goldie Wells, who's with us here today. Thank you so much for being here, Goldie.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
It's so good to have you. Last time you were actually on for our little tornado documentary that we did, and I was actually going through that in preparation for this, and it was very interesting how much, I guess we'll start there, how much progress has been made. I know there's been some talks about this, and with rebuilding still 5 years later.
It's 5 years, and well, there has been some building and some upgrading, but there's still a lot to be done. I'm kind of disappointed in some of the progress that we've made. It takes a long time. And the thing that we ran into, a lot of the folks who lost their houses didn't have the insurance to rebuild. Some of them got scammed. People came by and said they were going to do something and didn't do it. So we still have some places that need to be renovated.
Now, what with the Hampton School? Is anything going to be on that site?
Yes, Councilwoman Hightower is really working now. The school has been donated to the city by the county, so that takes money to do it. But there is a plan, and knowing how determined she is going to work with it. And she also is working on that Bingham Park. That has a lot of contamination, so they're needing about $32 million to get that place straight. But all of that's going to take some time, but it's going to make it's going to be a game changer over there.
Yeah, it was devastating what happened. But yeah, some of the things we learned. I mean, I know that you have a very wide district, because yours goes from, as I said in the intro, from just about into downtown out to Reedy Fork Parkway.
Yeah,
that's a very wide range of things going on.
About East Market Street all the way up to Reedy Fork. And with the distance between, there's also a lot of differences in the people that live there, their needs and their concerns. And it is a large district. I think we have about maybe 60,000 folks that live there.
Wow.
And so it's a lot.
Yeah.
But the job of being the council person, I always think of myself as the liaison between the folks and the city. I get a lot of positive calls, and then I get a lot of negative calls, and then I get a lot of calls with problems. So it keeps me busy. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Well, what type of? Can you talk us through some of those calls and what you're feeling from the community?
Well, right now I'm really on a high with the number of developments that are coming. We're going to have new housing, affordable. We're now kind of coining the phrase attainable housing, because you don't know exactly what's affordable for one person or another. But we have some housing coming, and then we have industry. the big LT plant up 29, and then we have Publix. Is not really in my district, but it's close. But the kinds of calls I get, well, if somebody's trash doesn't get picked up, I'll get that kind of call. And the other day, I got a call because someone had moved from the house next door, but they put all of the trash in her yard. So now what I do, I tell them, send me a picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Send me a picture, then I connect them with the code enforcement or with field ops, and they take care of it. Then you have the concerns of, I've had this house and I don't have the deed, and my grandmama's name is still on the deed. It's heired property. I can't get other folks, and what do I do? So then I try to direct them to, I said, first go to tax. She said, I've been paying taxes all these years. I'm the only one who's been paying. Go to the tax collector. Someone else may call and say that they are having some financial problems. Or someone else will call and say they want to start a business. And how can you help me? Do you know who I should talk to? And I really just see myself as a person to direct people here, there. Sometimes I can give them some advice and they accept it. And sometimes they just need a word of encouragement. When it comes to the number of, well, I guess you would call it homicides in our district, that's discouraging to me. I want to see that different. But I don't have the answer to that. Just try to say to the family, well, we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do as far as correcting the problem. But we have a new police chief. He seems to be very much concerned about the community and doing all he can. He's going around talking to folks and finding out what the community wants. So I see that as a positive, a real positive.
I will tell you one funny here. Brian went, the minute they named, you guys named the new police chief, he said, I knew him back when he was just an officer, and he said, I rode with him. So we actually have footage and everything of Brian and the new police chief back when he was the old officer. So the other night, Brian goes down to Barber Park and covers the meeting. And was that your district?
No, that's Sharon's district,
okay.
But I was there.
Okay.
I was at Barber Park.
And so now that footage is running about, and it is amazing because Brian and I covered, Irish Spencer had the GOAT Awards, earlier. And we were there, and the one thing Irish Spencer said was, the city council people and the police, they stayed here for the whole event. They didn't get up at intermission and go out the back door. And that's when it really triggered me. You guys don't have just 9 to 5.
Oh, it's a 24/7, 365. I really mean, and I think it is a little misnomer in the community because they think it's a job that you just show up and stand up when they said all elected officials.
And just cut the ribbon.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at the calendar, most days, like today, I have 4 things. Some days I have 5. 5 different meetings. And then
and we're fortunate we have you. So just know that. We appreciate your time and your
people
effort.
show up late.
Well, I have to tell you, what made you triggered something when you were talking about people calling you and you sometimes just basically having to hold their hand through a situation. And it reminded me of when my brother and I were growing up, our dad had a saying that the young person knows the rules, but the older person knows the exceptions. And I look at you as one of those that, I don't want to go talk to that newly elected council person. Goldie knows the deal.
Yeah, there is a value in experience. You remember that I was on the council for two 2-year terms, and then I came off the council, had no intentions of going back.
Like, boom,
But
you
I
back.
didn't. But when some of the younger ones were campaigning,
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a forum and I had no idea that I
You said, "I can't let this
"Oh,"
happen.
But I said, no, yeah. We've worked too hard to get where we are, and for their ideas to just say, oh, those were the wrong things to do, we need to change everything. Now, some things just can't. You just can't switch things off. And I think a lot of times people don't value experience as much as they should.
Right.
There are a lot of times when you say, that's a terrible rule, but you never know how
Right.
it came to be.
Right.
And that's one of the valuable things about our Mayor Pro Tem. She can remember the year
We're going
we
to miss her.
voted on
When
it. Oh yeah, we remember the year when we made this an ordinance because of this and that and other. You know, there are reasons why.
Yeah.
And now, we always have controversy when there's a new ordinance that's about to come forth. And right now, you've been hearing about the short-term rentals, and so we have to listen, but you have to use some thoughts about what the outcomes will be.
And I will just tell this to the audience because I don't think they realize how far back you have impacted our community. But if not for this lady sitting here, Dudley High School would have been bulldozed, and they would have put up some, modern day, probably low slung, no windows, brick building.
That's right.
But this lady led the effort to preserve Dudley, and she went up against some pretty strong people, including former Charlotte Mayor Harvey Gantt, who was on the side of bulldozing and putting up something new. And thank you for that. And I'm sure everyone watching this that has any connection to Dudley High School thanks you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. But I have a real bent for history. When I was in high school in Edenton, North Carolina, which is way what y'all call down east, small town, but we knew it being African American black high schools, Dudley had what a school would have. My school didn't have the big band and all those things that they had up here. And then to think that was one of the premier African American high schools, and to think that it was just going to be demolished. And then the other thing was that Grimsley and Dudley had been built the same year, and there were plans to continue the architectural renderings of Grimsley and demolish Dudley. And I give credit to Heather Cipher, who was over the Preservation Greensboro.
Right.
And she said, they started working with her. They hired someone to come and do an
evaluation.
evaluation.
It took someone like you. It took someone like you to champion it.
Just kept going, just kept going. I did. And do you not know Harvey Gantt? I saw him some years later. He thanked me because he'd gotten awards for the architectural work he did at Dudley.
Yep.
Yeah.
Things work out.
Yeah, they will. They will. They will.
I was going to ask you about the current city council dynamic, because I know that in years past it was very divisive, and I've seen here where it's like it comes into there's a little bit of a matchup, and I realize also there's a lot of times when it's like there's so much that needs to be done. You know what I mean? I know y'all got a long agenda. If you ever scroll through, you go to. I find it really cool that you could go to the city council on the website, and you could click on the agenda items, and it'll bring you to a timestamp within the YouTube video on the thing, and it'll give you the discussion. Like, right, if you just want to jump to a zoning reordinance or something that has to do with your community, it's kind of cool. But anyway, there'll be because I know. Nancy has a job where she's got to push through so many items, and because she's got a job to do, and then it'll have to do with your district or somebody else's district, and there's a little bit of contention there, or just we need to learn a little bit more about it, so let's push it. It's not a whole lot of the big bantering that it was before. So that's my feeling on it.
I think that we work well together. Of course, the discussions are necessary because we have to give another side of it sometimes for people to understand. But I think the thing that causes us to be cohesive at the end is that we see what's best for Greensboro. And that's what we say. Yep. What's best for Greensboro. Yep. And we know there's been a big divide in the West, and when you look at statistics, and folks live 15 years longer in the West than they do in the East, well, something has to be done.
Absolutely.
And all of them are intelligent people and caring people, and can be for sensible discussion.
Yeah.
If there's a good rationale.
Well, you seem to be a peacemaker when there are contentious issues. You again, it's the voice of reason versus the voice of emotion.
And that comes from experience and age and all of that. but we really, and that's the thing that I try to say, we got to do what's right for folks. Yeah. It's not about our personal feelings, and a lot of times some folks, if they are those fighters and don't want to give up because of their image, so we're trying not to be just personality driven, or I'm on my own soapbox thing. No. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm interrupting. And that's a hard thing to do in politics, because especially nowadays, you have an idea or an agenda or whatever, or a plan, and it's, maybe we learn more, and it's like, oh, maybe I was wrong there, and maybe we can shift.
Yeah, my thing is negotiate and compromise. Mm-hmm. If you have enough information brought in, then you can change your opinion. But you have to have enough and then make choices. Yeah. I remember we were discussing something one time, and the person said, I've made up my mind. I said, well, even the Lord changed his mind. He changed his mind about Nineveh. He didn't kill all the folks, Yeah, he changed his mind. He didn't kill all the folks. Moses went to so you can change your mind. It doesn't take anything from someone to change their mind.
And that's a sign of strength.
If it's for the better. Yeah,
that's a sign of strength. And one thing I will credit, and I still rue the day that the legislature changed the school board, but I think the nonpartisan does so much to keep you guys. Because I remember, Robbie Perkins was a Republican as mayor, but he was not considered Robbie a Republican. He was Robbie the mayor. Well, and that makes a big difference. It
makes a big difference. And there was a push to.
Oh, I know.
But
I know.
I'm so thankful that did not happen, because it causes a lot of
division. It does.
And some folks are loyal to an organization, and more so than they are what their duty is.
Yeah, because and that's what's happened in our country now, is there's just it's just so divided. And when you put that label on it, because when I see y'all, wherever I see, I don't think of you as sometimes I don't know the difference.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, we should have nonpartisan elections for all the judges and for all the school boards in the whole state, because there are people that will argue, well, you're not being real if you don't think there's still that underlying. It turns the temperature down.
It does.
And you're not fighting to see who can get turf for a political party. You're fighting because you've got different ideas about the future and whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask, speaking of the future, what's the future for Goldie Wells looking down the road?
Well, I've already said I'm not running anymore. I know that much.
But you can change your mind.
But I really am involved in a lot of things. I've been
always
been involved, and my church is very important to me. So I work on the local, the district, the state and the national level as far as my church work is concerned.
And now, which church is this?
This is the Church of God in Christ.
Okay.
It's a Pentecostal holiness church. It's the largest Pentecostal holiness denomination, and our headquarters is in Memphis, Memphis, Tennessee. So I serve on some of those boards. When I left Greensboro for 2 years, I went to Mississippi. When I retired from the school system, I went to Mississippi for 2 years, and I was the principal of a boarding school that our national church had.
Well, we're glad you came back.
Yeah, I'm glad I came back too. I'm glad I came back too. Yeah, and of course I'll stay involved in the community because the landfill fight. I wasn't on the council then, you know, so I'm still involved in the community. So I'll still be involved in the community. My my daughter and son-in-law and four, my 3 granddaughters all live in Michigan, so I go back and forth there sometime to see them. So I'll find plenty to do.
Well, there's no doubt about it.
I'll find plenty to do. Then I do some consulting work because I'm a retired educator, and I do workshops sometimes. It was very convenient doing Zoom because I was doing workshops for people in Wisconsin, and I'm sitting right in my house. So, yeah, so I'll find plenty to do.
Good.
I just hope that I keep my good mind and health.
Well, and you know, speaking of that, it's wonderful. In my opinion, you're going out on the top of your game because you've been able to accomplish a lot of things during your time. Now, Brian, if you don't mind, I'd like to segue. I want to talk about your hometown of Edenton, because before you...
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I said it wrong this whole time.
The New Jersey came out and he said, I think she's from Edenton.
It's Edenton, right?
But I have to tell you, we were talking before we located you from wherever you were wandering out there, but we were talking about this is the Jordan Franks?
No, this is Frank's.
The Franks house is what they.
Well, now they're calling it the Golden and Ruth Franks.
There
house.
you go.
Yeah.
Well, it just came up that the state most recent African American state historic site is in Edenton, and immediately she goes, "Well, that's my family." And I'm telling you, that is an amazing thing because the house is so full of history. And now the state will be able, the children from all over will be able to go in there.
Yes, and I was just, that to me, I've told the folks down there at the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, I just hope I live long, because you know they have to go by one grant after another after a grant.
But they're making progress.
Oh, they're making progress. Well, the reason that my father, Golden Azro Franks, was the first field secretary that Dr. Martin Luther King hired.
Right.
When he was getting started. My daddy led a lot of marches here in North Carolina. He was jailed for 87 times for civil rights. And so Dr. King came to the house twice. So that was one of the things that made it really.
I just got goosebumps.
But I've got a list of other folks that were in the movement that came to the house when I was growing up. And my mama said, you know, we should have kept a guest book or something. But when you're living history, you don't think about it. That's just life. So there were people coming in and out. At that time, we just called it Freedom House because that was a place they did a lot of strategizing and getting ready for marches, because he led marches in Williamston and Hyde County, and led 2 marches from to Raleigh, 2 or 3 marches to Raleigh. One was called From the Mountain to the Valley. And they say the reason there is a fence around the governor's mansion is because when they coming back from Asheville, they just camped on the lawn.
Yeah.
And so after that, they put a fence.
Those things. Oh man.
But So that's the reason. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think it's a real tribute. And my mother was a teacher and a leader in her own right. Yeah. In the church and in the community. Yeah. So I'm going down, there's a special day next Saturday in Edenton, and I'm supposed to sit on the porch and greet people and talk about the house. Yeah.
And that's so wonderful because, I worked for the governor in his first term and worked with the state historic sites, and the positive energy that was going toward acquiring and getting that house was incredible because they said, this joins the Palmer Institute as really a place down east that a touchstone for people.
And now the Harry Jacobs house, they're going to do something there also. So. They are working on that project.
I know a little bit, but could you tell me about Harriet Jacobs?
Harriet Jacobs was a slave girl in Edenton, and she stayed up in the what do you call it, up in the ceiling?
The attic?
The attic. Yeah. Stayed in the attic for years and years. Wow. And there's a book called Life of a Slave Girl. Right. She wrote it herself, and she finally escaped and went to Philadelphia. So they are doing all of that, the history, and there's a special team that's working with Michelle, and they are doing research. And so Edenton is an old historic town. Yes. It's right there on the Albemarle Sound, and it's becoming a real tourist.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful town, beautiful town. Yeah.
Even though you don't know how to pronounce it, you need to go sometime.
You need to go down to Edenton.
I'll make it there. You talked about Martin Luther King coming to your house. Can you give me your impression of? Did you know your impression of him at the time?
Well, the first time he came, I was a sophomore in college, so I didn't think too much of it. Everybody was at the house rushing around, and the people were bringing the food in and everything else. I had on a sweater, and my mom said, "Aren't you gonna change clothes?" So I said, "Why I need to change clothes?" And I had on my pretty pink sweater, so I didn't think about that. So when he came in, and he looked at me and he said, "Golden, you have a pretty daughter." I can remember that so well.
Boy.
Yeah, okay, that was the first trip. And it was, the people in town were not that impressed, okay.
Right.
Because he didn't have as much of a influence.
But I bet you every one of them told that story after.
Oh yeah. But when he came, when I was teaching the second year, see, I had graduated from college and I was teaching in Raleigh. This was my second year teaching, and he came. That Sunday evening, the town shut down. My grandmama's house was 2 doors down. The police were around. We didn't even let my grandmama come. She had to come through the police. I mean, it was a whole different.
Yep.
They had him to speak at the armory, and it was everybody, white folks and black people at that time, because he was known at that time. So it was a different experience. And I'll never forget it. Just the idea, and I still remember he had the softest hands out of anybody I've ever shook hands with. It was something. Yeah. And Andrew Young was here for the Civil Rights Museum and Center, and so they had worked together. Yeah. So I talked to him, and when I did write a book about my dad, and Andrew Young wrote the foreword for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That gives me goosebumps, because that's just, I'm sitting next to real history, and I think sometimes when people, because we're living history right now, that they don't realize the stories you would have that need to be written down. And thank goodness thanks to Brian, we've got you here to talk about it.
Well, during the time, though, when Daddy was really active in the movement, there was some shaky times.
Oh yeah.
And someone put a rabbit on the porch and a little note, Golden, you're gonna be just like this rabbit if you don't stop what you're doing.
Yeah.
Then when he get arrested, it was a roller coaster for my mama. She think he's gonna get out, and they said, "Oh, the judge went fishing today." So they wouldn't even try the case. It was a lot going on. But he was a strong person and did a lot.
Well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
But, I thought about it. I said, I'm doing some of the same things that Daddy did.
Yeah.
He would
and really, you shouldn't have to.
I know, but he when he would go to prison, he'd be in there writing letters trying to help the other folks to get out. Yeah, just doing things like that. Yeah. So I guess it's something about your genes,
Yeah,
chromosomes,
absolutely.
all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. We talked about history, and you mentioned Harriet Jacobs. Why is it important for us to have that history and to learn that and to know it?
It's very important to understand history. The big controversy about the critical race theory. Well, the word theory means it's somebody's thought. And so if you read the critical race theory, you'll see that they're saying that there are certain things that are, like racism exists.
Absolutely.
And it has been passed down. It's just to understand facts. It's not to divide people. But history is there to give us more knowledge, to keep us from making the same mistakes, keep us from not making the same mistakes, and to help us to chart our way forward if we don't want to make those mistakes. But I think that I know in our culture, African American culture, we do not do enough oral history and talking about the past. Sometimes the pain has been so that you don't want to talk about how it was. But we need to talk about how it was so that the children can understand that they didn't ever see that they couldn't go downstairs at the theater. That's what started the things in Edenton. The children were upset because they were tired of going up in the balcony, going down the alley and then going up in the balcony. Well, these kids have never had that experience. They never had to sit in the back of the bus. When I went to take my college SAT, the black kids had always gone from Edenton up to Shaw to take the exam. When I looked on that list, and Windsor was on the list. It was just 20 miles away.
In Bertie County.
In Bertie County. So I signed up to go to Windsor. I went to Windsor I drove over there that morning, and all the white kids, you know people from Edenton. Sure. But that man took me in a room by myself to take that exam. When I got back home and told my dad, he was so upset.
Yep.
And I didn't know that much about, because what we should have done was protested. We should have written to Princeton, where
right.
because my scores could not have been valid with me sitting there by myself with him. I wasn't in the same environment as the other students. But the little things like that. That the children should use the privilege, not just as a privilege, but the privilege to get a better education, to be exposed to more, and not just take all of this for granted. Just because they've never had to sit on the back of the bus, never had to worry about which hotel. I was telling somebody the other day that my grandmother had done domestic work, and she worked for a family that lived in the summer in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, and in the winter he was an architect in Wilmington, Delaware. So for the summer, my grandmama and I went up to the Berkshires, but every time we would stop on the way driving, he would say, "Let me go see what the situation is." And I said, as I got old, he was going in there and said, "Can I bring my black maid
exactly.
and her granddaughter in here, and that was considered the North. And you know, there was a misnomer that in the North we had all this freedom, but we just need to know the facts and not be angry and want to take up a gun and shoot somebody, but just know the facts. And so I think that talk about that critical race theory is not really what folks, they don't know what the theory is. And you just read those 4 or 5 points.
It's history.
It's just history, that's all.
It
just tells the children some basic things about life in America. And it's the truth.
Goldie, one of the things that I look back on as a native North Carolinian that makes me angry is that in history, in North Carolina history that we all had to have, and at that time it was the 9th grade, I believe, when I was, and there was nothing in there about the Wilmington race riots.
Oh, of course
I
not.
only found out about the Wilmington race riots as an adult.
No, they're not going to tell you that.
And to me, that is one of the more defining pieces of North Carolina history to show just how bad things really were.
How bad things really were, but to the African Americans, it would let those young people know that there were achievers. They had everything there, their newspaper, their houses and everything. And then
and a fusion government.
Burned them down, and they just burned everything down.
It's
just like it happened in Tulsa.
Yeah.
But it should.
But I heard about Tulsa.
Did you hear about that in school?
Didn't hear about North Carolina. So I look back on those things, and when I hear these, especially some of the legislators today talk about, they bring up CRT as like a dividing thing. I want to hear all the history. I don't, we may not like it.
No,
but it's okay.
Face the facts.
It's history.
That's what I say. It is history. It happened, and you cannot.
Were you a history major in school?
No, I was not. I majored in elementary education.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the area that I've worked.
Wouldn't you have loved to have had her in school?
I saw a girl the other day, and I know she must be 40 or 50 or something, and she said, Miss Wells, I remember the day that you let me sit in front of the class and read to the class. I said, you don't know what these kids think.
Well, I'll tell you a true story. When Sonny Gravely was, I forget where we were, it was probably downtown somewhere, and I'll just never forget, Goldie looks at her and she goes, "Quit calling yourself Sonny. You're Veronica, and that's a beautiful name." Oh my goodness, that was so funny. But once a school teacher, always.
I taught her in the 2nd grade, I think it was.
You reminded me of one of the other things I just didn't know about until I was getting into. I did a little project on LaBauer Park, and I dug into history and went down a rabbit hole, and I looked into the Greensboro. I believe at the time it was like the Greensboro Health Association, and it was a culmination of doctors and healthcare workers that would make decisions that they felt were best for Greensboro, and I believe George Simpkins and some others were trying to, get into the organization. And I think it took about like 15 years. I mean, I was reading the logbooks of all this stuff. And I think about 10 years, I want to say they started about 1945, and about 1950 they said, okay, you can be in, but you could be in the meetings.
But you can't say anything.
No, but you can't come to the public events.
Oh.
You can't come to the benefit, the beneficiary, the fundraising type things. We'll have you we'll finally have you in the meetings, but we can't have you we can't be seen with you, I guess is what it was.
And I think there was a case at Dr. Simpkins with the golf course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I think and then Dr. Blunt's case, because he couldn't practice over at the hospital. So the Simpkins PAC that we have now is named for.
And we actually run a program here that has interviews with, or long, in-depth interviews with Dr. Simpkins,
Really?
and also with
Steve,
Kilimanjaro,
Mr. Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro,
and Community Voices, and this was done in about 99, 2000.
Yeah, they lived it here in Greensboro.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, and just to think, Dr. Simpkins led essentially two cases that went to the
Yes,
Supreme
two
Court.
of them.
That's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's right.
And from all I ever heard, he was a wonderful, was he a dentist or what?
Dentist.
That he was had a great personality as far as a bedside manner and as a physician. So, you just, so much history in Greensboro that we look back on, and it's nothing to be proud of. And then we have so much history that is to be proud of.
Yeah.
And I think, in my mind, one of the things that I say this especially when I would go travel North Carolina, is Guilford County has no Confederate monument on any courthouse property, and we're about the only one that doesn't. And I look at it, and it has so much to do with the Quaker influence. It has so much to do with the African Americans being coalescing with others or forming coalitions, and other areas don't have that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But it's the truth.
Yeah. Oh, you go anywhere. I guarantee you, Edenton, there's a Confederate monument right there.
That's the fight right now.
Yes.
They've got a group right now fighting against, want to take that right down at the end of town, before you get to the waterfront, there's a statue.
But I love it. There's a fellow that put a meme on Facebook and all the social media, and it's a hand-painted sign as it says, "I apologize for the statue, but we're working on it."
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, apologize for the statue, but we are working on it. That was they have one in Edenton. That's some of my friends sent me a picture of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
But I will tell you, this was purely Brian's idea. You said, "Why do you want me? I've been on before." What? I will just tell you, you are an important voice for history, and this is oral history.
It is.
We're hearing it from you, and who knows? 20 years from now, we may be running this interview to show younger audiences.
Yes. But for the young people, I just don't want them to miss this opportunity that they have.
Right.
Education is still the key. We were taught that if you are going to succeed in America as an African American, you need education. Now we know a lot of statistics show that we're still not treated fairly.
Right.
Because they say that a white female that finished high school will be recognized more than a black with a PhD. So we know that the skin color is a privilege, but we don't want the African American children to feel that just because of that skin color they can't succeed.
Right.
And I still think there's some more Booker T. Washingtons, and there's some George Washington Carvers, and the lady that was over the team that found the vaccine, black woman. Yeah, she spoke here the other week. Very good. Yeah.
And that is just an amazing history that should be told constantly.
Yeah. And all of these inventions, if they could come up with a list of inventions that African Americans have done, it should give pride to the kids.
I have to tell you one funny. I worked with Robin Britt down at Guilford Child Development.
Yeah.
And during African American History Month, even though we worked with preschoolers, we would convey these, the teachers would convey these stories, and then they would ask the students to say something. They would draw pictures of people from a certain era, and this one little boy, I loved it because he would just sit there and listen, And they said, well, what do you want me to put on your picture here? Who is this? And he said, this is Dr. George Washington Carver. Well, what would you like me to put on there? And he said, he invented the peanut.
He invented it.
And
he didn't remember
I
it.
picked up that little boy and hugged him so tight
Yeah,
because it was just, it just
he
was.
invented the peanut.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. It was, but these were, like I say, preschool, and it was just such a joy. But that triggered.
Brian, you have another question?
No, well, I'm interested because we have I don't think we have a whole lot of time left. I'm sure Sandra will be giving me a cue here shortly. I was curious as to, I know y'all just had the retreat. I'm going back into politics here. I'm switching gears here. I know y'all just had the retreat and y'all set some agendas. I know some of it is for housing and urban development. I know we're looking for more housing. I know that you're looking to increase the income for the average median income for families across. I know you said that in your district, it was roughly about $17,000 was the average income. You had told me that. It might have gone up a little bit.
I think you got that off the news, but that's what they said.
Yeah, which, I mean, that was probably what I was about making. I did the calculation. That's probably about what I was making when I made about $8 an hour at Domino's Pizza. I mean, that's really like
it's not a living
nothing.
wage.
No.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. But what we have come to the conclusion is that the economy and the economic level determines what lifestyle folks can live. So we are going to be intentional about, when those companies come for ask for incentives, we're going to take everything through the lens of, is this going to be better for our citizens? Is it going to increase the value of their standard of living? Sometimes we've been looking more of just bringing in, but we think we're going to ask them some questions and put a few demands on them or requests of them that will help us to reach the goals that we want to reach. We kind of decided that. And sometimes with the fear of, well, if we don't give them what they want, they'll go to another city.
So be it.
We kind of think that Greensboro is the kind of city that they will want to come to. We have a lot of good things going on. So instead of us being timid about giving some of the requirements, and we kind of listen to, I listened to Ambassador Andy Young. He said that the way they did in Atlanta, they had some land, and they said to Delta was just a small company. If you come and make this your headquarters, you can have this land for 50 years for $1. But the contract has to be at least 41% minority contractors.
Because that's the makeup of the city at the time.
And then they would hire, because black contractors hire black folks to work for them. And Atlanta, the folks do well in Atlanta. Yep. But that's what they did. They gave some requirements to the company. Delta came there, and you see what it is, the busiest airport in the country. Right. But they went right hand and feed the left, so they did good.
Well, and I look back at cities that were progressive, way ahead of their time. When a developer would come in and say, we're going to develop these thousands of acres and put houses everywhere, the city councils and county commissions realized we're going to need schools, we're going to need infrastructure, whatever. And those communities would demand that the developer give them land for school in the middle of the area so they could do that. Fire departments and that kind of thing, because that's what they were going to cause the need for. So you might as well partner with us now before, And to me, that equates with when you go down the road, a 2-lane road, and the bridge that goes over it was built with the intention of a 4-lane going under it, and you don't have to go build a new bridge when the 4-lane goes under. So, and I will be honest with you, because I think you need to know this. I've always had a great experience dealing with the city.
Good.
And I mean it. I think it comes from, from the top, and also the city manager. And we've had some good ones, and we've had some bad ones. But
But we're on the move. We're on.
I will ask you this question, because I know the average life of a professional life of a city manager is not long, and you can understand why. Because it just is, you're working for basically 8 or 9 people. You're constantly having to go to the right, go to the left, go straight. It's changing. But the current city manager, how do you think so far? Because it's been a short period, but
Doing very well, I think.
Okay.
I think he comes with a lot of ideas. He's very intelligent, very smart, and he has the ability to work with the 9 folks.
right.
Yeah, it takes a lot to deal with different personalities, but he seems to be doing very well. And
You couldn't pay me to have that job.
well, I just heard about a manager and a
Babysitter,
an attorney.
too.
But he's doing well, and I hope it won't be a short
I'm
lived
with you on that.
because there's some goals that we've set, and you have to have someone with a vision, and when he's worked in some larger areas and has a lot of knowledge and expertise, so he has a big vision, and if we work with that vision, it will be for the betterment of the community. Now, what I've always said is Greensboro has to decide we're going to be a big town or if we're going to be a city. And you still hear some folks say, I don't want traffic like we got in Charlotte. I don't want traffic like we got in Raleigh. So, we got to get a different mindset.
Yeah.
We want some things, and then we don't want the other. But if we get some of this industry coming in here and more housing, and it's going to increase the traffic, but it's going to increase, make our city a better city. And we don't want to get behind. We number 3, and if we don't do something, somebody's going to pass us by.
Well, I look at all the interstates that we've got that just cross us, or we have to grow. I mean, we have no choice.
We're a logistics center because of the highways and with the when we were excited about Honda Jet, and now with Boom coming,
Oh yeah.
I was going to say, we're in the big city living now.
Yes. I can hardly imagine that. We talk about that plane go across the ocean in a few hours.
Oh man.
Woo! Yeah, so it's going to be big.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw Sanji's hand.
Oh, she gave me I believe that was the 5-minute cue.
Okay.
You were talking about people get involved because you said that this is your last term, right? What would you say to people? Why is it important that people pay attention to city government, that people get involved?
The things that happen at the city council level affect everybody in the city. And the things that we do is affected by what goes on in Raleigh. So you need to know. Now, we always say politics is all local, but this is where everything begins. If we have some ordinances, some that we cannot change because of Raleigh, but we should have the ordinances that are suitable for the people in our community. If you don't get involved, if you don't know what's going on, then you may end up with some things that you don't want. So it's best, and I think that neighbors ought to know neighbors. So neighbors need to get involved in community watches so you can watch each other's house, know what's going on. And then there should be community groups that get together so that, because what goes on in your neighborhood is not mine, but it's really important to the folks that live with you. So you all should have your neighborhood association. You should have yours. I should have mine, because we all have other concerns. And then you come to city council and get some of those things passed. What goes on down in the city hall, you need to be involved so that you'll get what you want.
Yeah. Well, and that can be from sidewalks to city sewer. I mean,
that's right. Even the traffic lights. And a school group came down from Rankin School, and they said, we need a light at our that street because children are crossing, and they got it. Yeah. They got it. Just they had learned in civics class that they could come downtown and ask for some things. So that's what citizens need to do, and listen to the news, read the newspaper, keep up with what's going on.
I agree.
Yeah, this little, doing this, I hadn't really paid attention nearly as much to city council as I have now. Because normally, I mean, my thing is covering basically history and the arts, and so now I've had to kind of steer into out of my comfort zone here.
That's history now.
Yeah.
See, when we talk about it later on, you say, oh, that's history, but we're living the history right now. We're in the present. In the present, and it's very accessible now. You can look at Channel 13 and you can listen to it on.
But you'd rather look at Channel 8.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. But the Channel 8 does the things that gives the programming that get right to the house.
Well, and I will say, I'm going to go back to Brian and I had covered again the GOAT Awards, the Greatest of All Time Awards. It was the very first group.
Yes.
And there were two separate groups of that were fighting gun violence in their neighborhoods.
That's right.
And we're going to have them on too. We haven't gotten that far, but we're going to have them on to tell their story, because I was very interested in their story.
And are we at the end? Or?
No. Keep going.
So what I was going to say is, I don't know how active they have been in your district, but what amazed me is their plea was, and which you see replicated in TV crime shows and everything, that you go in a neighborhood and these people will not squeal on the person that shot the little 5-year-old.
Right.
And so they were pleading and saying, we're watching you.
Yeah.
And if you don't tell the truth when you can help save people's lives, you're gonna wish you had.
Yeah, well, that's the plea. If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
And I believe you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously.
Oh yes,
now,
anonymously. So. Yeah. So let's hope that everyone gets involved. That the crime rate is way higher than we would like to be in Greensboro.
We're just about out of time. But thank you so much for being on. This has been fantastic. We're glad to have you, and we hope to have every city council member on.
Well, good.
But they won't all be as great as you.
Oh, right.
I mean, everyone has a different story, but yours is a story of continuity. I mean, whereas we may get the upstart or whatever, that there's a better story to be told by hearing.
Well, thank you all for having me, and I hope that.
Don't be a stranger.
All right.
Thank you for watching our program.